not one but two scary incidents in the sky. A flight from Paris to Newark experiencing extreme turbulence. The pilot forced to abort several attempted landings, trying to find a safe place to bring the plane down.
That is just one of the scares. First, let's look at that mystery on a flight from Chicago to Connecticut. 3 people pass out mid-flight. Several others complain of being sick. So the pilot makes an emergency landing in Buffalo. ABC's David Curley is at Reagan National Airport with all the details. Good morning, David.
Morning, George. This one is a mystery this morning. What caused these 3 people to lose consciousness? The airline is claiming it's not what you might suspect. Just 40 minutes into the flight from Chicago to Hartford, the nearly 80 passengers aboard the United Express jet realized something isn't right.
You could feel something in the air. Something just wasn't right.
A passenger in the middle of the cabin begins to lose consciousness. Mary Cunningham, a registered nurse sitting close by, gets up to help.
She was gray. Her color looked awful. So I asked for some oxygen for her. We got her on oxygen. As soon as she got on the oxygen, she was alert. She came right back. And then I went back to my seat after she was feeling better, and they called me right back because the person sitting right behind her passed out.
But then Mary herself starts to feel faint.
Started to feel short of breath. I didn't feel great myself. The flight attendant, same thing. Everybody in the middle of the flight started to not feel well.
3 people in all lose consciousness. The pilot acts. The plane suddenly begins a descent, 27,000 feet in just 8 minutes.
Felt like it nosedived. Engines full throttle, the airframe shaking, and we descended really quickly.
According to the FAA, the pilot feared a cabin pressure problem and followed procedure, dropping the plane to get to breathable air. Then, an emergency landing in Buffalo.
It's going to be gate number 4. Inbound flight, unknown medical problem.
But overnight, the airline, operated by SkyWest Airlines, says there was no pressure problem and no problem with the plane's equipment, no cockpit warnings, and the fact that no oxygen masks dropped. According to the airline, the pilot made a, quote, unscheduled landing in Buffalo, New York in response to a passenger losing consciousness while en route. Passengers who snapped these shots of emergency responders on the scene say they don't believe the airline's explanation.
It wasn't like a medical issue. It was multiple people affected.
The mystery and the plane remain in Buffalo this morning, while the airline and the FAA try to sort out exactly what happened. Even more confusing, the airline originally said only 1 person lost consciousness, then overnight changed that to 3 people. All 3 regained consciousness. They were checked by medical personnel on the ground and released. It's kind of a strange one, George.
Boy, it sure is, Dave. Let's try to work through it with our aviation expert, John Nance. And John, you've got the FAA saying the pilot was responding to a pressure problem, the airline denying that. How do you explain what might have happened here?
I think the thing that's most consistent, George, is that we probably had a cabin that was climbing maybe 10 to 11,000 feet. It had not set off the alarms in the cockpit. It had not dropped the oxygen mask. That happens if it goes above 12,000 feet. But 10,000 feet is enough to get people passing out. It's a pretty rarefied atmosphere.
Not 1, but 3 people at 10,000 feet. So it seems like the pilot did exactly what he had to do in this moment.
That's exactly right. Whenever you think you've got a pressurization problem, whether it's showing on the gauge or not, you get the airplane down to lower altitude. When you're up at 37,000 feet, the cabin may be riding at about 6,000 feet normally. Something was obviously not right here.
Okay, John Nance, thanks very much.